And within this talk, we're going to talk about definitions, characteristics of the different generations currently working together. And this is part 1. My name is Marie-Louise Rode Rasmussen. I'm a senior consultant in orbital and annexal surgery in Copenhagen, Denmark, and I'm a Xellenial. I've no relevant disclosures for this talk. Objective is to describe generational characteristics so the learner understands the different generations. And the goal is to adapt our teaching according to the generational characteristics of our team members. What defines a generation? First of all, it's a sociological term from the perspective that humans are shaped in their youth by the surrounding society, historical landmarks, economy, and new interventions. These 4 factors together define what turns and choices we have for our life, which make generations share values and beliefs. This is a perspective originally from the United States of America, US, and it was invented to marketing various products to the right population, so that the right commercialized product were for the right consumers. However, currently in the US, they are talking about silent generation, they talk about baby boomers, Generation X, Millennials, Generation Z. And all these generations are shaped by historical landmarks and the economy within US. Some of these events have influenced the rest of the world as well. However, these are the main characteristics for the US population. That doesn't mean we doesn't have generations in other countries or in other parts of the world. If you go into China, you actually see that they also define generations almost in the same time spans. However, it's not always the same historical landmarks who are defining the generation. So they talk about the war and the PRC generation until after Second World War. They talk about the Cultural Revolution generation, the Recovery generation, the Sandwich generation, and finally the Me generation, which is the youngest one defined. India is another example that we do have some of the same groups of generations. However, it's another historical point that defines where the shifts are. We have the traditionalists born before 1960, where India was still liberated. It was the first generation where it was a free India from the colonist time. We have the conventionalists, we have the progressives, and currently they're talking about the after Google or the global generation. And I know that if you go to Africa, if you go to South America, Greenland, there will still be generations, but the historical landmarks, the economy, and the perspective might differ for some of these groups. So, but we're going to take the terms from the Western US definitions. So, which generations are you from? Are you a baby boomer, a Generation X, a Generation Y, or Generation Z? After this course, I think you will know the answer to this question, hopefully. But let's start after Second World War. That was defining for most of the globe. And after the war, peace came. And with that came the baby boomers. It started out in 1946. High birth rates, a boom of new children. There was peace, and finally people thought the earth was a safe place to have kids. The economy boomed, and that gave the best and greatest consumers of all time, which are these post-war generations. Nobody in history has consumed so much as this. They had all the practical and useful education, including all women. And that's the first time in history that those are included as well. They are very family orientated. In their youth, they were shaped by the hippie movement. And even though many feel related to this period of time, only 10% is estimated actually took part in the hippie movement in US, but many feel related to that period of time. All right, Boomer, how is it at work now? Boomers, they live to work. Optimistic, idealistic, and they have an intensely strong company loyalty. They are team players, goal-centric with a strong work ethic. Their management preferences are chains of command. They want info to climb the corporate ladder. In respect to media, they consume the most traditional medias. They read newspapers, they use normal phones, mobile phones, they watch telly. They grown up with the television. They are the first generation to have television, and it came in their childhood. And that makes them digital immigrants. They adopt technology in order to stay connected with their friends and family, but they are never the first movers. And they will always prefer meeting face to face above any online solution. Generation X started in 1965 to 1980. They are responsible, self-sufficient, and resourceful. This is the first generation with planned children that created a new identity as a child within a family, and the family had less children. Individual children with individual wishes and needs for their future. And that came with a change in gender roles. So it's also the first generation where the mom wasn't at home. There were two working parents. Generation X is also the generation that still carries the largest financial burdens. They are still taking care of their parents. They have big loans, and they still take care of their children. They're shaped in the Cold War era, but followed by the optimism by the end of the Cold War and the breakdown of the Berlin Wall. They raised a new family form, both with mom and dad both working, but also in more hippie collective family shapes, and many with divorced parents. Generation X at work are described as skeptics, cynical, independent, and resourceful. They are flexible, pragmatic, and direct. Their management preferences is self-command, and they favor individual projects over working in a team. Generation X wants to have work-life balance, transferable skills, meritocracy, and equality are quite high-ranked values for these generations, and they want a casual work environment. And they're aiming for material security and stability through work. They are called the MTV generation, and they also consume the most traditional media. But they are within their use that the MTV came as a wave through US and Europe, and that was the most cool thing to watch, and they watched it non-stop. They are also digital immigrants, but they use digital platforms without any difficulties. Their preference is email and SMS, and they are all on Facebook daily. Xellenials is a small generation in the end of the Generation X. They are born in the Star Wars era and is characterized by an analog childhood and digital teenage time. They have the cynicism from the X generation and optimism and drive from the millennials. So in conclusion, a generation is a sociological term. It defined what terms and choices we have for our life. And within a generation, many shares values and beliefs. We've now heard about the baby boomers and Generation X, and in next talk we'll hear about millennials and Generation Y.